So everybody out there buying stuff, you can buy stuff all day long. Come see me now. So first of all, I'm really happy to be here today. I haven't been to a World of Commodore in a couple of years. So I'm happy to see that it's continuing on. My first World of Commodore was World of Commodore 2. Does anybody here go to the first one? You probably weren't even born. You, Brian? Did you raise your hand?
To the originals.
The very first one, like number 0, like Ground Zero, World of Commodore 0?
I can't remember which was the first one.
1983.
Probably not.
Okay. So the first one I went to was 1984. So, and that was pretty amazing for me. For those that don't know me, my name is Sid Bolton, and there's Rob Adlers. And I, like all of you here, obviously I'm a Commodore fan. But I thought I'd do a little presentation today as to why Commodore is the best. And I mean, you're all here probably because you think Commodore is the best anyway. So I'm just going to reinforce your choices in life. If you're here today thinking, have I made some poor choices to be here with all these people today? What am I doing with my life being stuck in an 8-bit world? I'm going to try and help you feel a little bit better about yourself by the end of it. Hopefully I accomplish that. And maybe along the way too, I might throw in a couple little things that you didn't know about computer history, because that's really what I do. That's the fun part of what I do on a regular basis, running the Personal Computer Museum. So here comes the ad. The website is up there. So a lot of you have been there already. So we're Canada's only interactive computer museum at this point. We just celebrated our 11th anniversary. It's hard to believe. So it's a great fun place for people to come and experience the kind of stuff that you're doing today, but we do it once a month, and of course we do it across all platforms. But of course, when you walk in the door, you're probably going to notice a slight bias towards Commodore. And if you picked up on that, for those that have been there, it's not a mistake. It's because the majority of us that are founders there, myself included, we're all Commodore fans, and we started out probably on the PET and then moved our way up. So what I'm going to do today is just talk a little bit about why I think Commodore is best, and go through some of the arguments and fights that I've had with my friends, and maybe you had growing up as well. I don't know what happens. Is anybody today having a Mac PC fight going on in their household, or with their friends at work, or their coworker? Linux. Wow, throw Linux in the mix, that makes it even worse. And then you get someone like Derek, whose middle name is open source. No, it's not. No, it's not. But he's also a Commodore fan. Good to see you, Derek. Welcome. The water is fine. So, of course, if you've been involved in the Mac and PC debate, or whether it's iPhone, Android, it doesn't matter what it is, right? You always defend what you have. Is that not right? I mean, because you don't want to feel stupid. Right? You made a choice, you bought a computer. And let's remember something, in 1982 and 1983, buying a computer was a major commitment. Okay? If you were younger at that time, it might have been the equivalent of buying a home. Like, that's how serious it was. And people didn't have more than one, right? Like, you had one computer. And if you had one computer, you had to put everything into that computer. Once you got it, then you had to buy software, and you had to buy disks. Does anybody remember buying discs at $50 a box? Here comes another plug. I'm selling some 3.5-inch discs here today at the end of the presentation. Really cheap. No, I'm just kidding. I'll throw a couple plugs in during the presentation. Not too many, though. This isn't an advertising thing at all. But really, I'm going to start with Commodore with the VIC-20. I know that's not by any stretch of the imagination where Commodore started, but it's where, I mean, I could talk about the PET, but, you know, and I have lots of PETs, but I didn't bring one in here to show, and you can see them here today, and there's even a color PET. I don't know what happened to the PET. Somehow the PET got colored. It's a pretty cool evolution. But the VIC-20, this guy right here, really made Commodore sort of turn a corner, right? I'm sorry, we're not looking for monitors in this room. Try the next one. It's very loud. Somebody just walking around with a 1802 or 1902 monitor. You'd only find that on a show like this. Anyways, the VIC-20 was the first computer that I owned. Anybody else here, was it their first computer? Okay. Now, it wasn't the first Commodore computer that I used, right? The first one I used was the PET. But the PET was at school. And so, I don't know what kind of a student any of you were. I was a pretty good student, but something changed for me when the school got a PET. I suddenly became the best student in the entire school. I was at school all the time. You couldn't get me to go home. I actually, enjoyed recess. No, I didn't go outside. I stayed inside the library with the PET. I got to school suddenly at 8 o'clock. Like before, getting me to school at like 30 seconds before that bell went off, that's the shrieking sound that no kid wants to hear if they're like walking to school or if they haven't even left their house yet, is that bell. And I would suddenly be at school way before the bell ever even went off. Because I was playing with the PET, right? And eventually I got the VIC-20. Now, there's lots of other people out there that were talking about why the VIC-20 was no good. 5K of RAM, they laughed. 5K! 5K. Yeah, well, you're right, that actually kind of sucked. However, I somehow managed to convince people that the VIC-20 was better than other things out there. Now, a lot of people by that time would have had the Apple II. I know a lot of you Commodore people have never actually seen one of these things in the wild. You can't touch it. It's not diseased. It doesn't carry any strange Apple diseases. So it's okay. If you want to touch it after the presentation, that's fine. I know, like I said, a lot of you have never seen one of these before. Up and close and personal. This thing had a lot of features and a lot of good stuff about it, but it also had a lot of terrible things about it. And when I was talking to my buddy about why he was an Atari guy, why Commodore was better than the Atari, I really had to think about certain things. So him and I used to fight all the time. It actually got to brawls at some point, physical brawl. Anybody have a physical brawl over a Commodore and Atari fight? Guys are wimps. Yeah, no, I'd take people down. Like, I'm a bigger guy, right? So I'd be, okay, well, if you don't like my computer, I'm just going to sit on you. That was my strategy back then. I wasn't really bright, but I was playing with my VIC-20, and I decided that instead of attacking the Atari computer, I would attack the VCS, the 2600, okay? And of course, I'm a video game guy now. I think that the 2600 is one of the jewels of the crown. But at the time, I was attacking it. I said, you know what? You're going to grow up, and you're going to be using that Atari 2600, and you're going to be a master at Space Invaders. Yeah, that's right. But you're not going to know how to program stuff on a computer like me. Because I've got 3,583 bytes that I can work with every single day when I go home at lunch or when I go home and come before school. And that's what I did. So I actually learned to program on the VIC-20. And by the way, that guy that I'm referring to in school, he's a true person. He's currently not employed. And I think he still has his 2600 somewhere. And I bet you he's still good at Space Invaders. He probably could still beat me at Space Invaders. That's the only thing he's got going for him. But I had the VIC-20, and I could actually program on this thing. And I actually turned my programming on the VIC-20 eventually into a commercial programming gig. Right? I actually made my living writing Amiga software for many years, and then sadly I had to write Windows software after that. But that's another story. So of course, he upgraded from the 2600 to this terribly ugly thing. Have you ever seen one of these things? This is an Atari 400. Yeah. Can you say membrane keyboard? Can you laugh about this? You can say, oh, guess what you can do? You can spill stuff on your computer and it's okay. But that's all you can do because you have a membrane keyboard. I can touch type. You can't. I can learn how to use a typewriter. You can't. And not only that, but your Atari really sucks because the BASIC is not even built in. Imagine the horror to find out BASIC's on a cartridge. It's not even built in. I know we have crappy BASIC 2.0 on the VIC-20, but at least it's built in. No. If you lose this cartridge, your life with Compute Magazine is over. Okay? And when you're a kid, it's easy to lose stuff like this. Okay? I'm still finding things from when I was 6. It's crazy. So it's really easy to lose a BASIC cartridge. And so, you don't want to lose one of those. So that's another thing that you can laugh about with the Atari, but you know what? Oh, look at that. 4 joystick ports on these things, okay? My buddy used to laugh at me. He'd say, "You're VIC-20. What do you got there? 1?" I'd say, "Yeah, but you know what, pal? You only don't even have 4 friends. So it doesn't really matter if you have 4 control ports." This is how desperate we become when we're kids, trying to find arguments. Has nothing to do with technical specs. No, nothing at all. The fact is, you didn't have 4 friends, doesn't matter if you have 4 joystick ports. The VIC-20 was also really, really important because it was the first computer that was colored that was under $300. Now, many of us remember that quote. Why do we remember that quote? Because somebody at Commodore made it up. It's true. Somebody made up that quote, they put it in an ad, and it's still something that I quote today when I meet people and say, guess what? This is the first color computer under $300. It's arbitrary. We could say this was the first computer that did color that had 4 joystick ports and a membrane keyboard and had other features, and it was under $1,000. Like, it's just a made-up quote, but it sticks in our mind, right? And the other thing is that Commodore was great because we had the first modem that was under $100. And also, Commodore very early on gave us the, what we call it, today we call it the do-it-yourself syndrome. Okay, someone like Leaf, for example, has this problem, like to do everything themselves, hack everything. Well, Commodore decided to make a lot of their products, this is actually a feature, guys, made a lot of their products so that you had to do things. So for example, this is the do-it-yourself, I don't know what you want to call this. This was a little thing that, you know, it was poorly designed, right? So you put this in the back and it would like do this. A nubbin. Yeah, it's a do-it-yourself nub or nubbin, exactly. So Commodore knew this, so they purposely engineered their stuff for the do-it-yourselfers. This is another reason why Commodore is best. Now, in talking about the fact that the VIC modem was the first modem under $100, it brings me to Commodore's marketing department. Now, a lot of you out there, how many people here are Amiga fans? Good chunk of you. I love the Amiga too. Makes me tear up every time I think about it. We all say the same thing, don't we, when we talk about the Amiga? Commodore didn't know how to market the computer. This is what we blame it on. If you've ever had an intelligent conversation with somebody, or even a dumb conversation with somebody about the Amiga, it always comes back to the same thing. Commodore screwed it up because of the marketing. And everybody then believes that the marketing problems with Commodore started back in the Amiga days. I'm here to tell you that's not true. Commodore didn't know how to market things well before that. Okay? And I'll give you some evidence. Some evidence that only comes from having such a strange collection as I do. If you look at these 2 boxes, Commodore themselves did not even know how to spell the word joystick. I find this fascinating. So Commodore's problems didn't start with the Amiga in terms of marketing. No. No. Is it joystick? Actually, maybe Bill can answer. Is it joystick or is it joystick?
Joystick.
Joystick. So that's the correct one. But see, this is the problem. Commodore didn't know. So that's why we have 2 things. The other problem is that this joystick has led, if anyone's ever had a Commodore joystick, this has actually led to more injuries and disability claims later in life than you can possibly imagine, probably than any other joystick on the market. However, Commodore made the computers, most of them, with a standard Atari joystick port, so we could have other joysticks. I'm not saying this is a good joystick, but I just happen to have the box for this one. So of course, they had choices, and you had choices, and you had lots of choices on Commodore for what kind of joystick you would have. That's another reason why Commodore did it best. They actually took some of the best ideas in the industry and stole them, right? That's what companies do sometimes. It was so competitive in the day, and it's just that way. So, okay, we know what happened to Commodore. We know they're good do-it-yourselfers. And the VIC-20, great computer. Then something happened. The VIC-20 went away. We had this guy. Did everybody just sigh a little bit or just kind of like shift a little bit? You know, got excited? Oh, you want me to turn? Is it upside down?
No, it's French. Sorry.
Oh, it's French. Oh, wow. Anybody French? Anybody speak French? Oui. Okay. All right, it's only two of you, so sorry about that. There you go. There's for the rest of you.
Oh, it's a 64.
Oh, it's a 64. Yes, you thought it was the Commodore 46. I had it upside down in French. So, of course, it's really hard to argue when it comes to 8-bit computers how Commodore did everything right with the Commodore 64. And probably one of the biggest things, of course, was the price. Because you remember this guy, you know, when you talk about how the VIC-20 was, you know, first color computer at $300, I think that was American at the time, right? So now, if you're converting, for those keeping up, that's less than $1,000 Canadian right now. But of course, this thing was like $15.95 or something like that. Like it was in a different ballpark. So the 64 comes out, and of course now a bunch of competitors come out. Atari, I mean around the same time as the 400, but they had this thing. I can't even lift this thing up. Sorry, this was in really rough shape. The 800. Now Atari people lose their mind when they see 800. Any Atari people here? Phew, I'm in the wrong room if you are. Atari people lose their mind when they see the 800. It's like us, how we feel about the Commodore 64. But no, the sound, nah, not as good. Graphics, nah, sorry. I know, see the problem is that you get into the situation where, see now that I'm beyond being 12 and fighting on the playground with my friends over Atari or Commodore, I kind of look at things a little more objectively, and now I like the Atari more because of Jay Miner, right? Because I just love Jay so much and the Amiga so much that I kind of like, you know, like there's a lot of him in the 800 there. And so you kind of think, well, maybe the 800 was better than I remember. No, Commodore's still best. Doesn't matter, I tried. I try to be impartial. As a guy who runs a computer museum, I have to be platform agnostic, right? It doesn't work very well for me. The 64 was just the best. If you look at something like Compute, everyone remember Compute? Anybody's fingers still hurt from Compute? Anybody still trying to fix a bug in something they typed in one of the issues of Compute? Yeah, someone's still working on it. And yeah, the worst part is when they have an error in here, and then you had to wait till the next issue if you hadn't figured out what the bug was yourself. Yeah, this is how I learned how to code. This is scary. Compute was biased towards Commodore because Commodore was the best, right? And if you don't believe me, just sort of take an overview of how many articles and programs were for Commodore versus something else. You know, you're looking here, and even here it's like the Apple version, VIC-20 version, Atari. You get inside there, it's mostly Commodore. That's okay, because Commodore's the best. It was so good, in fact, that Compute came out with this thing, right? Dedicated to Commodore people. Oh, imagine how pissed the Atari people were. Where's our computing magazine for us? We'll make our own, we'll call it Antic. We'll do that, we'll have our own, it's okay. Still wasn't as good, right? Commodore loved it so much they made their own magazine with the girl on the front all the time. This was to attract new buyers. By the way, I noticed that it's still the same target market. So, except for yourself, although she was kind of attractive, right? For an 80s girl, right? Maybe? No. And of course, another reason why Commodore is the best is because the Commodore 64, even though this group was around well before the 64 came out, the 64 made it possible for a group like TPUG to have its own full magazine. Remember when TPUG had this was crazy. This is more than 4 pages. This is nuts. This has real ads in it and really good articles. And the other thing you have to consider about why Commodore is the best, really for me, a lot of it has to do with the people. I want you to think about this for a minute. Imagine if Jim Butterfield was an Atari guy. Could you imagine what that would be like? That would just be wrong, right? Because the best people, the people around you, the people that I see all the time, are Commodore. It's just another reason why Commodore is the best. Now the other thing I forgot to mention is that Atari, I keep coming back to Atari, but I had a lot of fights about Atari. Atari had a killer app. Killer apps always help, right? Star Raiders. Anyone remember Star Raiders? No, of course you don't, because you're not Atari people. If you do, then that's good. However, even the best fall. Do you see the price tag on this? No, you can't because it's too far away. Active surplus, $1. So even the mighty fall, right? And my buddy also used to always say to me, make fun of me on the VIC-20, because he was at home playing the official port of Pac-Man, which we all know was pretty bad on the Atari anyways. But I'll tell you that I defended my VIC-20 version of Snackman unbelievably. I'm like, you know what? Snackman is actually closer to the arcade version. It's more responsive on the VIC-20. The processor's actually a little slightly bit faster than the 64. So, you know, the VIC-20, yeah, okay, so resolution feels sometimes like it's 8x8, but still, you managed to do some pretty cool things. And eventually, guess what happened? The VIC-20 did get an official port of Pac-Man. And it's actually not that bad. So of course the 64 is out there. The 64 is killing everybody. Killing everybody. Now, one of the things that you may have read about when you read about different stories about Commodore and how they were successful, they talk about the chip integration, how Commodore made the majority of their own chips, they own MOS technologies that really helped things out. And one of the reasons they did that is because in the calculator market, they had problems, right? Because Japanese were making their own chips that they were putting in the calculators, and so they were basically killing Commodore's margins. They couldn't make any money. So there was another company that made chips that decided to do the same thing, Texas Instruments. They came out with this thing. Anybody remember this guy? It has weird numbers. TI 994A, I don't know what the A is. We never saw B, C, D, or E. And suddenly it went from being this color to being beige. Talk about identity crisis. Oh, wait a minute, Commodore did that too. But still, beige became a thing after another color. But still, you know why Commodore was the best here though? You had to buy hardware to make this thing talk. We had Sam. You remember Sam? The software activated mouth? And of course we had Impossible Mission. I can still hear the sounds. Can anyone recite the words for me? Stay a while. Stay forever. See, you all know it. Because the 64 could do that speech without any extra hardware. But the TI guys, they needed hardware. So their chip integration didn't do them any good. And eventually, especially if anyone here watch *Halt and Catch Fire*? It's a good show. You'll find out a fictional version of what didn't happen. But it's still interesting. Eventually they went out. And by the way, while we're talking about other computer manufacturers, what the hell is this?
Doorstop.
Who came out with a doorstop and thought they could sell it into the home for $99? Every time anyone ever made fun of me in my VIC-20, I said, yeah, I got 5K. Look at these guys. They've only got 2. And its earlier brother only had 1K of RAM. They also had the do-it-yourself nubs too. They were the do-it-yourselfers, so you had to, somebody's put those on there. Keep it. This is actually probably because the floor was too tall for the door. More Commodore do-it-yourself stuff. I don't think there was anything. Did everybody modify their 64 or 1541 in some way? No. I'm still finding people dropping off weird contraptions like this. I don't even know what this thing does. But somebody built it. Because Commodore lovers did that because Commodore was the best. I think it's a reset switch. I'm afraid to try it. It could actually be a nuclear accelerator switch, bomb detonation. I guess I could take the screws off and find out. But either way, it went in the user port and you could do something cool with it because that was one of the great things about the Commodore. It allowed you to do things. My 1541 was Frankenstein into the strangest thing you've ever seen. I had a device switch on it, I had an LED thing going on, I had it so that I had all the segments of the LED so that if I flipped the switch, the main switch, it was 8, and if I flipped it, it went to a 9 just by flipping one little bar. I thought it was so clever. You didn't have to do that on the Atari, but the fact that you had to do it on Commodore actually made it the best, because it was fun. You felt like you were accomplishing something. You use your phones today, what do you have to do? Push a button with your finger? Come on. Like, we had to do a lot of stuff just to get a program to load. That made us kings and queens of computers, right? We actually felt good when we did something. How many of you used Print Shop and printed stuff out and gave people cards that you made yourself? Or printed out big banners that people didn't want for birthday parties they didn't want to be at? How many of you did that? Yeah, that's right. You did. Yeah, you probably still have some ear damage from those dot matrix printers, causing you issues. And of course, Commodore was very successful with the 64, but it didn't end there, right? For some people it did. Some of you are still using the 64 for things. But of course, no, Commodore decided that evolution was the way to go. So of course, then we went to the 128. Now everybody that walks into the museum that sees the 128 hears me say one thing about it, or one phrase, that this is the best, bar none, 8-bit computer ever made in the world. We have ours decked out. We've got a 3.5-inch disk drive, 5.25-inch disk drive. Unfortunately, we run him in 64 mode, but still, not all the time. Not all the time. What's that?
We ran it in 64 mode.
Dude, nice. But it looks so cool, and it does so much, and it had so much potential, right? It was a computer that could be anything to anybody. You wanted business and CPM and all that boring stuff? Yeah, we got you covered there. You want to play games on your Commodore 64 and the growing vast library of third-party support? Got you there. You wanted to be a little bit more powerful, have more memory, do greater stuff, more productivity? The 128 side definitely got you there. Had everything. This thing had everything for the time. Commodore. Commodore's the best. And then the Amiga came along. And once again, Commodore is the best. And I know we had some marketing problems we talked about earlier. Let's forget those for a minute. I didn't think anyone would have a 600 here today, but somebody did. So I brought a 600 with me just because I thought maybe you might not see it. Plus it was smaller for me to carry. Oh, the Amiga. I cannot tell you how the Amiga changed my life. I remember meeting a guy. Does anyone remember Randy Linden? He used to be a TPUG member. Anybody?
What was the name?
Randy Linden. He did some demonstrations for TPUG, and he did some different things. I met him at a couple TPUG meetings. Randy was the guy who programmed Dragon's Lair on the Amiga. He was the guy that brought full screen animation to the Amiga first, essentially, when everybody told him it couldn't be done. He was also the guy that wrote the 64 emulator for David Foster at ReadySoft. So if you remember, all of you that went out and bought an Amiga and had to cash in your 64 and then went, oh no, what have I done? When your 64 was still worth lots of money, right? You had to sell it to buy the Amiga because it was a lot of money. I still have my receipt from my original Amiga. I bought the Amiga, I bought a box of 10 discs and Defender of the Crown, the monitor and the disk drive, the extra disk drive, and it was $2,400. A lot of money. But Randy changed my life with the Amiga in the sense of he also went on to do a bunch of things, but he created Bleen, which was a PlayStation emulator for the Dreamcast, and got sued so far into the United States that they're still looking for him. Actually, he's if you've ever used anything Microsoft, like Microsoft Connect or Microsoft Band, the fitness thing, a lot of his code is in that. But amazing programmer, and he did a lot of stuff on the Amiga. And he said to me, he saw a game that I wrote. Actually, I used to be the Amiga disk librarian for T-Bug years ago, and I used to have stuff on Fred Fish disks, and one of my games was a puzzle game, and he said, "What did you write that in?" And I said, "Amiga Basic." And he said, "I can't believe you did that in Basic. I can't believe how well that works in Basic." He goes, "If you wrote that in C, that would be amazing." And this guy was very influential to me, and so guess what I did? I went and I learned how to program in C. And I became a professional programmer after that for like 2 decades, just because I learned how to do stuff in C. But you know why? Because Commodore's the best, and I wanted to do it on my Commodore machine, right? So I did it on the Amiga, and it was awesome. And it was great. Getting a hard drive on an Amiga 3000 after taking my Amiga 1000 and stacking so much stuff up onto the side, I had to get a new desk. Like these little desks here, if you ever have an Amiga 1000, one of these desks won't do. So you get the sidecar, and then the RAM expansion, and then the Lucas board. Anyone have a Lucas board? You have one of those? And one of those peripheral expansions for the memory. Do you remember when 2 megabytes was $1,500 Canadian? I remember that. It was really bad. That had nothing to do with Commodore, but still, Commodore was the best. So the Amiga changed my life, and I'm sure for a lot of you it's been an amazing machine. Then Commodore did some weird stuff. Yeah, but that's okay. They also brought out this thing. I don't think there's one of these here today. I love video games. Anybody that knows me knows I love video games. I have the largest collection of video games in Canada. I have almost 16,000 video games now. I wish I had more Amiga CD32 games, but Commodore did it best. They did all kinds of cool stuff. They actually had, if you ask anybody in computing history what the first 32-bit gaming console is with CD, they talk about the 3DO or something else, or this thing called what's it, PlayStation? I think it's called, something like that. No, that is not correct, guys. We don't chime enough that Commodore actually did this stuff ahead of time. They did cool stuff and they did neat things, and unfortunately, and I mean, there's different stories about why it wasn't popular in the US and couldn't even legally be sold in the US and all that kind of stuff, and who knows what exactly is true, maybe Bill knows, but the fact is that they didn't sell a lot of these. You could only get them in Canada and some other places that they were imported to. And so the machine didn't do very well. The Europeans did not carry us this time. They did a job. However, it's still pretty cool. It's still pretty awesome, and it still makes me realize that Commodore did so many things so well that it's always been a company that I would always want to stick to. And the thing is, I thought maybe having a computer museum might change how I thought about Commodore, because growing up I was so biased because that was the machine that I owned. And I was always curious about, what's the Atari really like, is Alley Cat any good? Like, I remember that game and I thought, I want to play that game, and you can only get it on Atari. And that's a Bill Williams game. And see, Bill Williams, he switched, right? He was an Atari guy, and then he made Mind Walker on the Amiga. Okay? If you ever want a trippy experience, okay, play that game and maybe have some kind of, substance abuse going on. You will never be the same person after that game. Rest in peace, Bill. That was a cool game. But I always wanted...
Can I interject something since you talked about Mind Walker?
Sure.
We had that soundtrack playing in every single office. And so as you walked around, you'd hear that... And everywhere you went, it was playing. Until somebody stole the RAM out of your Amiga, then it'd be locked up.
So that's what happened at Commodore. That's the true story. We should write an article about that. That's cool. But I thought maybe as I was saying, I thought maybe my mind would change about Commodore after seeing all these other machines. So at the museum, which is in Brantford, by the way, which is actually only took me less than 50 minutes to get here, and I wasn't speeding too much. It's not very far from here, really. I know a lot of you maybe don't drive out of the GTA, but if you do, please come and visit us, because at the end, when I've seen all these computers, we have really everything that's significant in terms of personal computers. We have Apples, we have Ataris, we have the Texas Instruments, and you can play all these things. And it's probably one of the only places where you can go kind of head to head with that stuff, right? Because again, how many of us had multiple computers? Like, I was really fortunate. I had a VIC-20, a 64, and an Apple, all at the same time. So I knew Commodore was better than the Apple. Just because every time I tried to do something, like, you know, I was like, nah, the Apple's okay, but my Commodore's better. So my mind has never changed, even though I've now saw all these computers. In fact, I embrace learning about new computers because I'm thinking to myself, maybe there was a better computer than Commodore. But I'll tell you, 1,000 computers later, we've been open for 11 years. I haven't found it yet. So it leads me to believe that really Commodore is the best, always will be the best, and certainly has the best people. And I would say I've made so many lifelong friends. You know, people like Derek. Derek, how long have we known each other? It's been
28 years.
28 years, got the Commodore. And so Commodore truly, truly is the best. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope I brought back some memories for you and some of the things that you remember about the old days, some of the fights you maybe had about these old computers. Feel free, I'm going to be here just probably till after Bill's presentation this afternoon, which is at 2. But I do have Commodore mugs, PC Museum mugs here. These are unique, they're $10, and they go towards helping out the museum if you're interested. I also have a few things up here that are from the museum that I would like to find a new home for. Not my cell phone, or my keys, by the way. My iPhone can stay with me. But see, even now I'm platform agnostic because I have a BlackBerry running Android and an iPhone. See, I can't get away from all the platforms. But I do have some stuff up here. The manuals, I would really like people to find homes, and so if you're looking for something, I mean, you know, like cheap, whatever, make a little donation to the museum, it's fine. I also have some blank 3.5-inch double-sided density discs for your Amiga, which are hard to find. They're brand new. So I have a few boxes of those. I didn't see anybody else with those here today. And I also have a couple of VIC cartridges, and I have 3 Only Amiga Makes It Possible buttons. And these are the original Amiga Makes It Possible. These are not remakes, okay? These are not 2015 Redux versions. These are the original ones that came out in like 88 or something like that. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them about the museum or about any of this computer history stuff. But other than that, thank you for listening. And just remember, Commodore's the best.